I'd rather be with you. Yeah.
Welcome to Good Vibe Radio. I'm very happy to exchange with you today. We're going to discover your path, your entrepreneurial path, and we're going to go through your company, Inato. And we're going to go through as well how do you deal with the current times and how do you make the most out of it, trying to send some good vibes to the people who are looking at us, who are watching us right now, because it's very important. I call it Good Vibe Radio because we need some joy, we need some optimism. And I actually interview entrepreneurs that I love every day at noon 19. So Kourosh, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, so no anxiety, no bad vibes, no problem with the crisis right now?
Well, you necessarily have a bit of anxiety, I think. So we had, I think some of the anxiety came from investors to some degree. So even though we have great investors whom we love, following the confinement, we got calls from absolutely all the investors saying, this is the end of the world. How much cash do you have? Mm-hmm. So we spent like a good week making sure that the cash planning was fine. But apart from this, it's going well.
Okay, cool. So everybody who's going to join this session, feel free to ask questions to Kourosh. I will give your questions to Kourosh. So Kourosh, can you tell us a little bit or give me your pitch, your one-line pitch? What is Inato?
Sure. So Inato is a company that helps the pharmaceutical companies bring drugs to market faster and cheaper. And so we do this by helping pharma companies work with untapped sites, meaning small hospitals that today do not really run clinical trials, but have access to patients who today do not have access to clinical trials.
So basically, you are solving a big problem, which is the cost of bringing a new medicine on the market, right?
Yes, exactly.
So yes.
Yeah, which is $2 to $3 billion today. So it's the most expensive endeavor you could imagine. So a single drug to market costs $2 to $3 billion. So it's more expensive than anything, planes, anything, and it takes 10 to 15 years. And one of the big reasons behind this is patients. You have very, very few patients who go into trials. Trials have a terrible reputation. So you have about 3% of patients today that ever participate in the trial.
Okay. Why do they have a bad reputation?
They have a bad reputation because the pharma industry has never been great at communication. Mm-hmm. And when you're in this industry that mixes money with healthcare, with health, it always gets a bit tricky. So I think the pharma companies have a bad rep to begin with. And so anything that has to do with testing new medicine that are seen as not being safe on people seem to think that they become guinea pigs. So this is the reason why most of them kind of fear trying to go into trials.
Okay, and how do you solve that problem? How do you make it easier?
So at the end of the day,
if you can drink if you want. Take your time.
I can drink. So at the end of the day, what we believe is that the doctors are the ones that are the best position to encourage a patient to participate in a trial. Because if you look at a protocol of a trial, it's so difficult to understand that you need to have a doctor here to explain to you, we believe this has value for you for X and Y reason. And so what we're doing is we help doctors in smaller hospitals get access to trials and propose those trials to their patients, which is a better experience for patients, because if you want to have access to a new drug, you can do so within your small hospital. So in France, for example, if you're not in Paris, it's difficult to have access to trials. And you probably want to avoid going from La Rochelle to Paris twice a week to go in a big hospital. So we help you get access to trials in the smaller hospitals around you.
Okay, cool. So can you give us like a little snapshot of where is Inato right now in terms of impact? Like, what are the figures that you follow? The numbers of patients or the numbers of trials or?
Yeah, so we look at a mix of number of patients and trials in hospitals, basically. So I think we did about 80 trials in the past year and a half. So this means that we worked in over 80 countries. So the company is based in France and the US, but we've been working in most countries that do clinical trials, and this represents something like 10,000 patients included in trials.
Okay, and then your clients are directly the pharmaceutical industries, right?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, so pharma and biotech.
The first time I met you, Kourosh, you were not at all in this market. You were creating a company with one of the with Balthazar, actually, one of my colleagues right now. So this company was dealing with the freight industry. So a totally different market. What made you switch from this market to this one, and how did you found this opportunity, which is totally different, and who are your co-founders?
Yeah, so completely, totally different. So I think the issue Balthazar, or at least I had in the company with Balthazar, is that we were very young when we started, and we probably started for the wrong reasons, meaning Balthazar had identified a market opportunity in the trucking industry, but we had, or at least I had, absolutely no love for the trucking industry, no interest, no love. I started the company thinking in 2 years we're going to be done, we're going to sell it for a huge amount. We never sold it for anything. We never made a single dollar. So I think the biggest lesson for us here was you really have to love your industry, and that simply wasn't the case for us in the trucking industry. We actually tried to kind of read trucking magazines every week. It never stuck. Trucking magazines, I never opened a single one.
It's true, because now I know, Paul from Fretlink. You've met him. I mean, he's basically doing the same company that you tried, and he's passionate about the truck industry. It's true.
Yeah, it's kind of the famous industry founder fit. I think we had a terrible fit in the trucking industry, and Paul hasn't made one.
And what made you switch to this new market?
So initially it was a completely random meeting with Jean-David, so he's one of my co-founders who's a doctor. So amongst my 3 co-founders, there's 1 other engineer and 2 doctors. And so I actually met Jean-David through the family. So I think at that time he was helping the medical startups at the family. And I had always had a deep relationship with the healthcare industry, because my entire family are either doctors or dentists or pharmacists. So I was the only one kind of escaping the curse of the healthcare industry in the family. So I went back to it rather naturally through my meeting with Jean-David.
And so Jean-David explained you the big opportunity or the big problem, and you digged into it, and then what was your very first proof of concept? And did you sign the first clients, or did you go first to raise funds with VC? How the first 6 months, what did you do? What was your roadmap?
So the first thing I did was learning about the industry, because the issue I had was, even though I was interested in the industry, I had no idea about anything. I didn't know how drugs were being developed. I didn't know what a phase in a trial was. I knew absolutely nothing. So I met with clients who were nice enough the first year and a half to spend time with me, even though I was obviously not qualified to sell anything. And after a year and a half, we were able to kind of break through with Sanofi, who got us through a first pilot. And after the first pilot, we raised our seed round. But it was because
no money.
No money at all. So because we didn't know the industry, it was a very, very slow start, meaning we didn't raise funds for 2 years. So we didn't have a single employee for 2 years. And I remember that over 2 years, we spent a total of 30,000 euros. That was all we had.
And how many people you were, the four of you?
Only the four of us, Jean-David and Philippe, who were part-time, and William, my co-founder, and myself full-time.
Okay. Okay, so the digging into it, getting the knowledge, understanding the culture and the language, and then finally having a first pilot. What is a first pilot with your company?
So in our case, the first pilot was helping Sanofi on a trial in multiple myeloma. So it's a disease of the bone marrow, cancer of the bone marrow. We helped them select sites in countries where they had difficulties finding the right sites to recruit patients for their upcoming trial.
Okay, and how do you manage to do that?
So the way it's a bit niche and a bit technical, but the way we managed it at the beginning was through a purely data-driven approach. So what we did is initially we put together a small data team whose work was to look at all the public data available on trials and on hospitals in the world and come up with kind of rich profiles of which sites would be a good match for the trial. And so we did some kind of matching like any kind of marketplace, but only based on the data available out there.
Okay, we have a question from Fatoumata, who is saying, can you tell us how the patients are protected in case of side effects? But the thing is, you don't deal with patients directly, right? If I understand it well.
So we don't deal with, so it's an interesting question. It kind of goes back to the fact that people have prejudices, understandably, against the industry, but this is something that is very, very highly regulated. It's not regulated neither by us or the pharma company. It's regulated by the FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe, so the regulatory bodies that make sure that the drugs are brought to market safely. And what happens is you have ethics committees that are basically doctors that are not paid by the industry, who are supposed to validate the protocol of the trial to make sure that we properly assess the side effects before the trial is run. So it has to be ethically proper to go forward.
Okay.
And one additional point, by the way, to this is that the side effects are mainly assessed very early on. So they're assessed not in the large trials, they're assessed initially in animal testing. And then when they go to human testing, so this is what we call the phase 1, you go to a very small number of patients and you actually test whether the drug has adverse side effects or not. Which is, by the way, from an ethical perspective, it's the most touchy part of the trial because you're actually testing for side effects, which is unfortunate. This is why it's the only part of the trials where you actually pay patients. Afterwards, patients are not paid. So you pay patients. It's not a great process, but it's the best we have today.
Okay, so people who need money take risk actually to test. We don't have a better way to do it. That's what you're saying.
No, we don't have a better way. And by the way, it's a very, very, very small piece of all the clinical trials, but it's the one that is the best known because, for example, if you have friends who were students and who got paid to go into trials, those are the phase 1s. Those are the phase where you test the toxicity of the drug. So you have a number of interesting startups that are actually testing whether you can replicate this with machine learning and models that are in vitro, that are in silico instead of being in vivo, but were years and years before we actually were able to replicate the human body in silico.
Okay, so right now, how many different medicines have you been working for or helping to test?
We've been working on about 20 programs, I would say. So it's a difficult question because when you do clinical trials, it's not only for one medicine, it's for one medicine with a given indication. So one drug can actually be applied to many, many, many indications. So we worked on maybe 20 drugs, but for probably over 40 indications.
And then you raise funds. So who has been the first people to trust you?
So initially we had secured our first round with Serena, so a fund in Paris, and Fly, which is based in Berlin.
Okay. And since then, you've been raising again and again.
Again. Once. So the seed round was with Fly and Serena, and about 18 months later, we raised with Obvious Ventures, that is a fund based in San Francisco that was founded by one of the founders of Twitter, by Ev Williams. And we raised with Cathay in France.
And you've been already making some turnover because you were signing the pharmaceutical industries.
Right. Yeah. The one big advantage of the pharma industry is difficult to get in because you have a lot of very specific expertise. But it's actually, for startups, it can be a very powerful industry to be in because you can get very large contracts early on. So within a year of the first funding, we got a 2.4 million contract with a large pharma. So you can get very large contracts very fast. The best example of this is a company called Viva that is very famous in the VC industry in the US because they raised 8 million, so only a Series A, and then they got, without any additional funding, they got to IPO, and today they're worth 25 billion. So you can, in the industry, you can get one of the best cash efficiencies that you can imagine.
Can you tell me the project that you're working on right now that is exciting for you around COVID-19?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've created a platform that is a free access platform, completely free, that is called covid.inato.com. And basically what it does is it aggregates all the data that exists out there on the ongoing clinical trials on COVID. So we went from 0 trials to about 600 in 2 months. So the number of trials is absolutely exploding. And we've created this completely pro bono for 2 reasons. One, kind of like an internal reason, which is that we wanted the team to be able to do something about COVID instead of continuing the business as usual. And the second one is we wanted to help the doctors and the pharma companies track the ongoing trials to get a better sense of what drugs are being tested and are they actually working or not. So if you go on the website, you can check, for example, the results of the chloroquine trials. So the very famous...
Can you remind me the name of the website so I can see it?
So it's COVID.
Yes.
Type? No, I can't type. It's covid.inato.com.
covid.inato.com. And there we have the results. And
so you can see,
yes.
You can see the results. So unfortunately, results are very difficult to understand and to really analyze. So for example, even though most people believe that the trial that was run by Didier Raoult in Marseille is actually only noise, that it's meaningless, people are still talking about it a lot. So what we're doing for now is we are putting all the information available on the chloroquine trials, for example, in one place. So in the search bar that was actually built with Algolia, you can look at all the trials with results, and you can then go to the results on the different websites.
Okay, and this was something that your team enjoyed doing, I guess, because they felt like they could participate in in finding a treatment against.
Absolutely. And I think one positive of the crisis is that you can get projects off the ground and running infinitely faster than usual. Not only because you can have your internal team be really behind it, but you can get input and you can get support from all the actors, for example, in our case, the doctors, within a day. So because people are so interested in helping against COVID, we got feedback from 10 doctors within 5 hours. They would test the platform every day. So you can get a product with early adopters off the ground in a week instead of 3 months, because usually you get the first meeting a month, then a month, etc.
Okay, and so you felt so. Can you give me some insight about this how do you call it, this medicine
So COVID is a disease.
No, but the
Chloroquine.
No, exactly, chloroquine.
The exact name is hydroxychloroquine. Okay. So it's a medicine that was used that had nothing to do with COVID initially. I think it was tested on Ebola and a number of other viral diseases where it had some efficacy. And today what's happening is, this is what has been relayed very broadly in the news. Didier Raoult, who is a very famous virologist based in Marseille, has started giving it to all his patients. And what he did was only an observational trial, meaning you only look at the patients that come in, you give it to everyone, and you try to see if they get better. He believes that it works. This is why you have countries all over the world ordering this medicine from Sanofi. We don't know as of today if it actually works, and we actually have more and more trials that are coming in that are more robust from a methodological perspective, and that are showing that unfortunately it doesn't really seem to work. So we're still in a gray zone where we don't know if it actually works.
Okay, because they are giving it in hospital.
Yes. But it's difficult when you're in a crisis like ours. You want to believe that the first drug that we're finding is going to work. The issue that we have with this is that, imagine if it doesn't work and we're telling everyone it actually works, you end up in a situation where you have no way of testing alternatives. Because if you're running a trial on 5 different drugs that might work, the patients are going to say, no, we want chloroquine because we've read in Le Monde that chloroquine works. So you're putting all the eggs in the same basket, which is a pretty big risk.
All right. Can you give me some other alternatives on the COVID-19, if you've seen it through the different treatments that are being tested right now?
Yeah, so if you go on the website, you can look. There is a very long list of all the treatments. What is kind of funny, by the way, is that the treatment that has been the most broadly tested as of today is Chinese traditional medicine. Obviously, it's tested in China, but this is the largest number of trials are actually done on traditional medicine.
All right, and let's go back to the reaction of the crisis. I mean, you said that your VCs were calling you because they wanted to know how was your cash management and cash position, but you're all good. You have you told me 18 months of cash in front of you, so you don't feel threatened right now, and you can keep on focusing with the team. What have you changed since the crisis with your team and the way you work?
So what we've mainly changed is the focus that we have on the future product roadmap. So we've basically, if you think about it in terms of the OKRs that we have in place, so the internal objectives, we killed probably 75% of them. And the main reason why we killed them was because the amount of focus that you need to work when everyone is in their own home is much greater than when you can have informal discussions at the office. So I think that was, for us, it was really a blessing in disguise, because we had the feeling for a long time that we weren't providing the level of focus that we should be providing, and this kind of forced us to do so.
Okay.
So now we have one objective for the year, 4 key results.
And how do you keep the faith during this period of time? Like, how do you keep it your happiness and the happiness of your team?
Well, we've been trying to do, so our office manager has been great, and she's trying to send us daily activities that we go through more or less.
You are 40 people.
Yes, we're 40 people, so we're still quite small, but we try to have we try to do workouts together. We try to do video games, anything that kind of replaces the usual office life.
Oh, cool. And it works?
It works. the drinks altogether, as you might have tested with your friends, don't really work, because the Zoom with 20 people, it's just horrible. So what the team have been doing that is great is they do a team by team drink at the end of the day.
Cool. Okay, yes, 5 people, so you can have a conversation. What do you see? What
Yeah.
do you see in this crisis that will remain afterwards? I mean, what's your vision about the world coming after, if you have one?
Well, I'm going to only focus on what I know and not go into big suppositions. But I think what is interesting in large industries like the pharma industry is that the level of disruption that COVID is bringing is so great that it's boosting the acceptability of change in an incredible way. So basically, things that had been in discussions for years and years. So for example, in terms of trials, for years, people have been talking about doing more virtual trials where patients wouldn't go to the site, they would actually use telemedicine, etc. Because today you don't have the choice anymore, we're kind of leapfrogging to the next generation of trials. So if you're able to find the right teams at those big companies that are willing to take a bet in a time of crisis and not simply try to become more conservative, you can actually, as a company, you can gain 2 years in 6 months.
Yeah, true. So you see some pharmaceutical industries who are like really pushing forward and not as you said afraid of and freezing everything among your clients.
Yeah, as always, it's difficult to know, to kind of differentiate what is talk and what is going to be action at the end of the day. It's like the VCs, you have all the VCs saying we're still open for business. We'll see how many VCs actually are open for business. So they are saying that they're now willing to try new things. We'll see in a couple of months who is actually keeping their word or not.
Because you can be part of this journey of trying new things, basically. Working with you is trying new things.
Yeah.
But you already have some big clients with you. I mean, is the goal for you to convince more clients or to convince more tests to be done by the clients that you already have?
No, it's absolutely new clients. So what we believe is actually, if you're able to bring back what you're building to the opportunity around COVID, I think you have a good chance of selling to new clients. On the contrary, I think you cannot act as if business was continuing as usual. So what we're doing now is that every one of our pitches now is starting by, because of what COVID is doing, we believe that this is the future, and this is what you should be doing now. You simply cannot act as if your usual sales pitch is still going to work.
Do you have any competitor that is a serious one and that you're just looking at?
Well, I think like many companies in very large industries, the main competitors right now are still the status quo. So meaning the internal teams at the large companies, the CROs that are, I'm not going to dig into the details of what CROs are, but that are the very old school companies that provide services to pharma companies. So as of today, it's more about convincing our clients to change than to convince them of working with us versus the competitor.
And the more precedence you have, the more you can convince these new clients. Yeah. What makes you driven and happy to do this this work at Inato, like in the mission itself?
Well, in the mission itself, we're very, very big believers in the fact that medicine should be accessible to everyone and not only to the people in the largest cities that have access to the best hospitals. So one of the things, for example, we're working on that we're very passionate about is how can you bring more minorities into trials? Because if you think about it, if you continue in the direction where drugs are only tested on white people, and usually male white people, you end up in a society where the drugs have been designed for male white people. So they don't work on Black female because they have never been tested on Black females. So one of the big push that we're doing is bringing those smaller community hospitals into the picture so everyone can be part of designing the new drugs and not only the richest, more privileged people.
Okay, I get it. And so a lot of people who will be watching and who are watching this this now are entrepreneurs just starting their company. What would you tell us about the very beginning? What is the most important to focus on when you want to achieve a mission-driven startup as you are doing right now?
Well, what I would do differently if I were to do it again is spend much more time discussing with prospects and much less time thinking about the strategy. Because I think when you start, you often naively think that you can build a great strategy in your head, and it actually absolutely doesn't play out. So really what I would recommend is shortening as much as possible the time between thinking and testing it with the market. So it's difficult in an industry like the pharma industry where actually finding meetings is not that easy, but I think people should spend most of their time trying to get meetings and much less time thinking about the strategy.
There is a question from Romaric who is asking basically, does it mean that today there are drugs only prescribed depending on the skin color? Just
no. So it doesn't mean. So it doesn't mean that they're only prescribed for skin color. It means that basically we do not know about the efficacy of the drugs on the populations on which they were not tested. So you would never have a drug that would not be prescribed to Black people, but we wouldn't know if it works on Black people when it gets to the market because it wasn't tested on. So what is happening, for example, today is that in China, now the authorities are asking for the drug to be tested on Chinese people who have different phenotypes than Western people, which wasn't the case before. So now the government bodies are asking for the rules to change. And in the US, what is great is that the FDA is actually now pushing the pharma companies to include diverse people in trials. Which, by the way, unfortunately, is easier to do in the US than in France, because as you know, in the US, you're allowed to gather information on ethnicity. In France and more broadly in Europe, you cannot ask someone what's your ethnicity. So it's way more difficult in Europe than in the US. And okay. I saw also a question from Fatoumata.
Yes. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, just I wanted to quickly answer. It's an interesting question from the perspective of, are all trials being halted or not because of COVID? So what is happening that is going to be hugely disruptive for the pharma industry is that because of the focus of all the doctors on COVID, so if you look at the Institut Gustave Roussy, for example, in Paris, that is only doing usually oncology, so cancer, they are going to have to focus on COVID because everyone needs to help. So what it means is that most of the trials are going to be paused for, we don't know how long, maybe 3 months, 6 months. So the entire industry, in theory, might lose 6 months. So this, as we discussed, is a reason why you actually need to change things to kind of make sure you do not lose all this time for nothing.
And Romaric is asking if the number you present help in the discussions and to what extent.
Do the numbers we present,
the results,
what numbers?
Regarding COVID-19 that you presented?
So we haven't used the numbers on COVID-19 in our discussions. This is purely to help doctors. Do you mean, did it help doctors, the numbers? Is that the question?
No. The question was about the results that you get out of the different treatment tested on the COVID-19, if it helped.
Yeah, so we're really in the early days to be able to tell. The main reason being that Right now, we have very little results on COVID. We have, on the 600 trials, only 8 have published results. So we're in the early days of knowing what works or not. So we'll have a better idea.
Actually, no, he won't. Now he's. No, when you say to pharmaceutical industry, okay, you're gonna make more money if you or lose less money if you work with me. This helps a lot for sure.
Yeah. It helps, but it's very difficult to prove. So if you were able to go to a pharma company and say, look, I can prove to you that on any given trial, I'm going to save you 10% of what it costs, you would do a killing and you would work with all the top 20 pharma company within 2 weeks. The issue is that no company has ever really been able to prove this in a very rigorous manner. So what we're mainly selling on today, like most companies in the space, is the vision. So you have to be compelling on describing a future that is compelling, that is interesting to pharma companies. And the numbers, hopefully they'll come later, but they're going to take years.
And last question, because I know you have to leave at 1. You're part of the family community. We met years ago. Who among the family startups or among anyone else, who do you like to connect with and to discuss with? Which entrepreneur, who as an entrepreneur you like to confront a little bit your ideas with sometimes, just to when you're adopting or when you want to have a.
This is actually something that we don't do enough. I think we should do more. I had great discussions with Charles from Comet, who has been very impressive in terms of the learning curve he had. So he's much younger than me, and he has been growing the business tremendously. I think that what today we're trying to do that is difficult is bridging the gap between the French entrepreneurs and the US ones. Because unfortunately, in large industries like ours, French entrepreneurs have very little experience at the end of the day. So I think this is something, even if the family could help further, that'd be great. Having the bridge with the US is really what is missing today, I think.
Because you need more of them to connect with.
Yeah, I mean, for example, recently through our US VCs, we met with one of the most senior people at Viva who brought the business from 0 to 500 million of annual recurring revenue in a few years. This doesn't exist in Europe. I hope it will soon, but as of today, those are only US success stories.
All right, cool. And it's on our to-do list. Thank you very much, Kourosh. Thank you, everybody, for following this moment. It was a pleasure. We are already Friday, so we'll meet on Monday, next Monday. And on Monday, I have a new guest, and you know who it is. No, I will tell you. The guest on Monday is Anna. Anastasia, you know Anastasia from MyDay, another healthcare company from the family. Thank you, everyone. Stay here because we're gonna have this moment, this giant chat roulette. Remember, you can meet with people who've been here with us, and the goal is to exchange upon what Kourosh said. I'm happy that you discovered Kourosh, because Kourosh is not every day on BFM TV or anywhere on YouTube, and it's cool to have you, Kourosh. It was really a pleasure to discover what you do more deeply, and I hope that everyone will follow Inato as well. Thank you. And let's go to networking. So all of you can click on networking, and you can meet randomly for 5 minutes the new people that you don't know. Hello, Louis. Bye-bye, everybody. See you in the networking room. Thank you, Kourosh. Thank you for your time. See you.